Will it be a white Christmas or will it be a wet and windy Christmas? And why do we even care in the UK about white Christmases? And what's the weather doing in the lead up to Christmas? I'll be answering all those questions plus many more in this week's Met Office Deep Dive. We do these every Tuesday. You can find them on the Met Office YouTube channel. They're exclusive to our YouTube channel, so make sure if you like these in-depth forecasts, you hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And if you haven't got a Christmas present for a friend yet, recommend the Deep Dive. It's free, and they'll enjoy the gift of in-depth forecasts for the foreseeable future. Now we're starting with this very dramatic scene across Iceland at the moment. Of course, it's made the news. You might have heard about it. It is the long-awaited volcanic eruption near the town of Grindavik. Luckily, the residents were evacuated from Grindavik some weeks ago, and hopefully there'll be no casualties or indeed no property damage from this. But it's quite a spectacular eruption. 4 kilometres, I believe, the eruptive fissure is, and it's at the moment staying to the north, at the time of recording at least, of that town of Grindavik. But you might be wondering, and this is where I can shed some light as a meteorologist rather than a geologist, of course, whether this is going to impact the UK at all, because there was that famous volcanic eruption back in 2010 that did disrupt flights across the UK. But at the moment, it poses no risk to flights because it's not necessarily a big ash kind of volcano. It's not going to be erupting in the same nature as the volcano back in 2010. And that's good news because our winds are currently coming from Iceland. Those winds are changing. Let's put the wind arrows on here. This is the time of recording. And if we zoom in a little bit, just to give you some context, so you can see where that town of Grindavik is, just on this peninsula here in Iceland. And certainly there's a risk there to the local population, and perhaps a risk during coming days and weeks to very local flights. But despite the winds coming from Iceland, we're not seeing the same kind of eruption that we saw back in 2010, where we had a volcano that erupted underneath a sheet of ice, and as a result we saw huge amounts of ash and ice and glass erupt into the atmosphere, disrupting flights. So our winds are coming from the northwest. This change in wind has been brought about by the passage of a cold front. There's the cold front. It brought a wet start to the south during Tuesday, but that's now clearing to brighter skies. And it's a big change actually that's happening to our weather over the next few days. We've seen westerlies over the weekend. We saw some very wet weather to west and northwest Scotland. That rain then headed south. That's the rain band that is now clearing the south and southeast of England at the time of recording. But as that moves away, well, high pressure, which has been sitting to the south of the UK, is also moving away. But what we're seeing instead is this north-shifted storm track, the jet stream to the north of the UK, and a bit of a contrast to what we saw during recent weeks and months with a south-shifted storm track and low pressure bringing some very unsettled weather to the south of the UK. What we're seeing over the next few days and beyond, in fact, as I'll go into in a minute, is a north-shifted jet stream, these lows directed to the north of Scotland and often ending up into Scandinavia. So what does that mean? Well, we'll often see these west to northwesterly winds over the next few days. That brings about a change in temperature. Now, if I just take the jet stream off, maybe I'll rewind the clock a touch. In fact, let's go back to the time of recording. And as that cold front moves through, then you can see the blue hues returning across the UK. So into Tuesday night, into the start of Wednesday, some colder air. And in fact some wintry showers over the north of the UK, over higher parts. But what we will see during the rest of the week and into the weekend is this oscillation in the temperature and the wind direction. Sometimes the wind will be more of a west-southwest direction, and it will bring some milder air, for example, during Wednesday. And sometimes it will bring northwesterly winds, for example, into Thursday, and colder air south again. And into Friday as well, that cold air will produce some wintry showers, mainly over northern hills. But by the weekend, we're back to more of a west-southwest or westerly influence. and mild rest. So this oscillation in temperatures over the next few days as the winds oscillate between west and northwest, bringing milder and colder conditions at times. Now what that means is that it will often be marginal in terms of snow falling over northern parts of the UK. Not really going to see any snow further south in the next few days, but it's quite interesting in these situations to look at the what we call the wet bulb freezing level. Now this shows the height of the 0 degree isotherm above sea level. And you've got the place names on the map there. There's Scotland, there's England and Wales, and there's Northern Ireland. And as meteorologists, we always look at the height of the 0 degree above sea level if we want to know what height the snow will fall to. And it's not necessarily going to fall to that height of 0 degrees. It often goes a little lower. So you can subtract 200-300 metres from this height, because if the freezing level is 200 metres above your location, then the snow will keep falling. And if the precipitation is particularly heavy, it brings colder air down with it. And so when you've got heavier precipitation, it might be 300 or 400 metres. But a typical rule, let's go with 200 metres as the rule of thumb for snow to be falling. And what you can see here is that much of England, Wales, Ireland at the start of Tuesday afternoon are in the greens. But we've got the blues there across Scotland. That means that the freezing level there is about 400-600 metres. So yeah, subtract 200 metres, as I mentioned, and you've got 200-600 metres for the snow falling. Now, skipping forward to the start of Wednesday, and actually this is where it gets quite interesting, and you can see this big gradient for Wednesday morning. The greens out to the west as the wind switched to more of a west-southwesterly or westerly direction. But the blues there across Scotland. And the far north of Scotland, we're into the greys, which is 200 or 0 degrees for that 0 degree height above sea level. So that would indicate that we've got some falling snow right down to lower levels for Shetland and for Orkney. But certainly over some of the hills for Scotland at first Wednesday, and before the greens take over then and really lift that snow level by midday, really. By lunchtime, that snow level is going right up. So at first on Wednesday, some snow over the hills of Scotland and perhaps to lower levels for Shetland and Orkney before rising. Now, skipping forward again and playing it through, Wednesday's eventually going to be a mild day, but by the start of Thursday, those northwesterlies arrive and you can see the blues spreading south once again. And those blues, mixed in with a few greys, therefore the far north of Scotland would indicate that by Thursday, once showers return, turning increasingly cold through the day on Thursday, those showers are going to be turning increasingly wintry, mostly again over the hills of Scotland, perhaps over the tops of the Pennines, perhaps to lower levels for the far north of Scotland because of the colours there indicating that freezing level coming down. But further south, Northern Ireland, much of the rest of England and Wales, well, it's greens, and that's the freezing level well up, so above 1,000 metres or so. So that just indicates that the temperatures are varying over the next few days. There'll be some snow at times over the high parts of Scotland, perhaps down to lower levels for the far north of Scotland, and perhaps at times over the tops of the Pennines, but nothing out of the ordinary for the UK. We'll also see a bit of a temperature oscillation. I'll show you the minimum temperatures. They vary a bit more. This was the start of Tuesday. Low single figures in places, touch of frost here and there, touch of grass frost. Into Wednesday morning, and just ahead of that system that's bringing milder conditions in, it's coldest towards the east. To Thursday morning, it's a mild start to the day because, of course, we've seen that mild air spread in. But through Thursday, it turns colder as the northwesterly winds arrive. And by Friday, colder conditions in the north, relatively mild further south. So a frost for Scotland, perhaps out with the wind, but it will be windy. And then into the start of the weekend, again, a touch of frost for northern Scotland. Not so frosty further south, and I'll talk a bit more about the weekend in a moment, but it is expected to, again, oscillate with those temperatures. Now, what is most of note with the northwesterlies that I talked about coming in for Thursday is just how strong they'll be. So let's take a look at the bigger picture. In fact, the jet stream is quite important with this. So zooming out, this jet streak, we call it, this core of very strong winds pushing across parts of Greenland and Iceland during Wednesday will deepen this area of low pressure pushing into Scandinavia. Really significant. It will continue to deepen during much of Thursday as it pushes into Scandinavia. The jet stream is in excess of 230 miles an hour, so very powerful jet stream. This area of low pressure is sitting just on the correct side of the jet stream to allow the jet stream to really spin it up as it goes into Scandinavia. And by the time it gets into, say, Sweden, by the end of Thursday, that low pressure has a central value of about 961 hectopascals. Not only have we got that very low, we've got a very high sitting in the Atlantic, an unusually high area of low pressure for this part of the world, for the Atlantic. And this, on Thursday, is around 1,046 hectopascals. So a low, a high, in between, a tight pressure gradient. And that, of course, means particularly strong winds. And those strong winds are going to lead to, let's take a look at the wind gust graphic here. Those strong winds are going to lead to fairly widespread gales across northern parts of the UK. Here is the strongest plume of winds coming in for the start of Thursday. The key is over here. Everything that's above 50 miles an hour is coloured in, and then the darker shades indicate even stronger wind gusts. And so playing it forward to around about dawn on Thursday. So if you're getting up on Thursday morning, it's going to be a very lively start to the day. These strong northwesterly winds bringing gales. And the risk over the hills of Wales, the hills of England and Northern Ireland of 50 mile an hour wind gusts or more. And for northern Scotland, the risk of 60, 70, even 80 mile an hour wind gusts. You can see how some of these darker shades correspond to the key there. Now, let's try and zoom around the map and put a bit more detail on it, because it's quite interesting how the winds will vary from place to place. They're going to be strongest, as I say, across some northern parts of the UK. So the wind gust graph on the right here just shows just around coastal parts of Orkney, for example, a peak there of 77 miles an hour. Likewise for Shetland, 79 coming up. And you can see by the time here, that's about mid-morning on Thursday, those winds are peaking across the Northern Isles before steadily declining into Friday. Might just move it further south then, the far north of the mainland of Scotland, again into the 70s, 60, 70 miles an hour. And it's pretty blustery all across Scotland, but as you come further south, it's more like 60s in terms of the miles an hour. So Glasgow, 55, there's the peak. Again, peaking Thursday morning, 60 odd for Edinburgh. But this is an interesting part. Parts of the Pennines see this peak here because the wind, well, the higher ground will be pushing up into a stronger wind part of the atmosphere. And so just sampling some of that, we're into the 60s. There is a risk of 70 mile per hour wind gusts over the Pennines, the Peak District, for example. So yeah, very, very blustery indeed. In fact, this graphic shows the risk, or at least the probability of, on this side, 60 knots, so 65, 70 mile per hour wind gusts, and as you can see, clearly marked out, northern Scotland, parts of upland Scotland, and then this line down the Pennines highlighting that risk area. You can just about make it out there. And then on the left, it's the probability of more than 70 knots, or 75, 80 miles an hour. And again, places that are picked out, northern Scotland, Orkney, Shetland, north of the mainland, and some upland parts of Scotland, as well as northern England. So all in all, this just tells us that all across northern parts of the UK, it's going to be a very blustery day on Thursday. We've issued a yellow warning for that. Widely 50 mile per hour wind gusts plus, but for northern hills and for parts of northern Scotland, there's that risk of 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts. So that could disrupt transports, it could bring some power disruption, and certainly it could close some bridges and ferry crossings and so on. So we'll keep updated on that over the next couple of days as we get closer to the event. But a very windy day on Thursday. It will also result in large waves. This shows the significant wave height. If we just skip ahead to Wednesday night, and you can see this large area of high waves coming in across northern and western Scotland. But as that low moves into Scandinavia during Thursday afternoon into the evening, it's going to push all this water down the North Sea. and we'll see these very big waves come down the east coast of the UK, storm surge, and affect the near continent as well. So yeah, that's another hazard, as well as the strong winds we're likely to see overtopping of coastal waters and some very large waves. So hazardous conditions around the beaches. Certainly not a good day to hang out on any of those beaches or cliffs near the sea. Now, that's the wind. I've covered the storm surge. Looking at my to-do list here. And then there's a change taking place into the weekend. There is, once again, as I mentioned, an oscillation with the wind speed. Only a slight oscillation, but the winds this weekend look likely to switch from the northwesterlies that we see on Thursday, bringing, like I mentioned, some wintry showers into northern parts of the UK, snow mostly over hills, to, that's Thursday, to more of a flatter direction. Now, more of a westerly direction. Here's the jet stream. That's that powerful streak of the jet stream moving into the continent. There's another low emerging out of North America at this stage on Friday, and that low is likely to change the wind direction across the UK to more of a westerly. But there still remains a lot of uncertainty about the exact development of this low coming out of North America and the degree to which it will push our winds to more of a westerly or keep more of a northwesterly. Only subtle changes in the development of this low will make marked changes in terms of the wind direction for the UK, and the big consequence of that, of course, will be the temperature. So, if I just show you the temperature here, this is the latest model run, and what it suggests at the moment is that after that colder interlude on Thursday, the northwesterlies will see more of a westerly influence later Friday and into the weekend, and that milder air with some cloud, with some rain, for example, put on the rain there just to indicate it. The rain will be around some of these fronts, but most of the rain will be affecting northern and western parts. Well, that, according to the latest model run, is going to stick around throughout much of the weekend. But there's a lot of uncertainty about this because different computer model runs are suggesting different things. Now, this is showing the temperature plume at 5,000 feet, but it's a good indicator of how the temperatures will be at the surface for Aberdeen. And what it shows, I appreciate you might not be able to see, but it shows from Tuesday the 19th out to Friday the 29th, and it shows the 52 different computer model runs that the European model runs, and it's plotted them all on the two graphs here. Now, obviously, as you get further out in time, further ahead with the forecast, those runs diverge, so you get a bigger spread. But what's fairly clear is looking at this period here, this on top is the model runs from 24 hours ago, and this on the bottom, again for Aberdeen, is showing the model runs from the latest output. And this is this weekend, 23rd to the 24th of December, so that's this period here. And 24 hours ago, the model runs were generally agreeing that it would be colder through the weekend. We'd see these northwesterly winds, colder but brighter with some showers. The more recent output has produced this big bump in the temperature, so suggesting the milder air will hang on throughout the weekend. So that's the period we're looking at here. These 2 days, the 23rd and the 24th, both showing the forecast for Aberdeen, but the top image is from 24 hours ago. The bottom image is the most recent output. So something's changed in the output in 24 hours. 24 hours ago, there was this idea that, get rid of that, that's not the right one. There was this idea that this cold front here, that's making an appearance late Saturday, would sweep across the UK quickly, and we'd see this cold air spread south for the weekend before Christmas and indeed Christmas Day. The latest output is suggesting that cold front's held up because the low develops more deeply, slows down, the whole progression of events slows down, and we get the milder westerly for longer through the weekend with some cloud and some rain, most of the rain towards the northwest. What does that mean for Christmas Day? Well, actually, it doesn't make too much of a difference in terms of what we were thinking for Christmas Day, because either way, even though that cold front is slower to clear through this weekend, it's clearing nevertheless for Christmas Day. So, let me show you the most likely weather pattern for Christmas Day. That cold front does clear, perhaps some early rain in the south on Christmas Day itself, but once that rain clears, we've got low pressure to the north, and we've got this west-northwesterly airflow. Similar conditions to the next couple of days, really. West-northwesterly airflow. Showers, perhaps longer spells of rain, mostly towards the north and the west of the UK. Cold enough for some of those showers to be falling as sleet and snow, but mostly that will be over hills. And temperatures not far from average for the time of year. So to summarise that, this is our latest thoughts for Christmas Day's weather. Many places expected to be dry, fine and bright once any early rain clears from the south, if we do indeed see that weather front clearing south on Christmas Day morning. So plenty of bright weather, but with a west-northwesterly airflow, there will be quite a number of showers moving in, especially for Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, North West England. And the coloured areas on the map just show what flavour these showers will be. So the darker grey here, rain, sleet and hill snow. Pennines, hill snow. Southern Uplands, hill snow, for example. The darker grey here across parts of central and northern Scotland just suggests that we'll see snow down to lower levels perhaps on Christmas Day. So what does that mean in terms of whether it will be a white Christmas or not? It does depend on your definition, of course. Now, why do we care about white Christmas? I did ask that question at the beginning. Of course, it's all about Dickens. He wrote the Christmas Carol book in 1843, and he just experienced quite a few white Christmases. One really notable one was in 1836, and that was famous because that Christmas saw the most deadly avalanche on record in the UK. And this is a good Christmas pub quiz question. Where in the UK saw the deadliest avalanche on record? It was actually in Sussex, southern England, a town called Lewes. And in that Christmas of 1836, a huge amount of snow piled up on the white hills or the chalk cliffs above that town, and eventually an avalanche occurred and was quite devastating. There is, to this day, a pub called the Snowdrop Inn. Anyway, I digress. So Dickens saw a lot of white Christmases, but these days the definition of white Christmas isn't that kind of Dickensian Christmas card scene. The Met Office official definition of a white Christmas is just to have one flake of snow falling somewhere in the UK, and believe it or not, that happens at around 70% of Christmas days. It means that for most people, we don't see lying snow on Christmas Day, and we're not expecting it this Christmas unless you're, say, on the Cairngorms or the Northwest Highlands, for example. Widespread lying snow, much more uncommon. 4 out of every 50, 51 Christmases in recent times have seen widespread lying snow. The last one, of course, was in 2010. Talking of Christmas, this is my last day at work before Christmas. I will be back on the Wednesday after Christmas with the 10-day trend, but this is just my opportunity. I know a lot of people asked for pictures of Murphy last time I showed my dog on the deep dive, so just treat you to this Christmas-themed picture of Murphy and wish you all a Merry Christmas. Thank you for supporting us with the YouTube channel during recent weeks, months and years. It is much appreciated. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tell your friends all about it as well. Merry Christmas.